Alright, hello. And this is just a video on my thoughts on Sifu. And as you can tell, I am using a mod to put Gene from God Hand in the game. And this brings me up to the point of how I feel about this game. I had high expectations for Sifu. I was expecting it to kind of be a spiritual successor to God Hand in a way, because of certain mechanics that are reminiscent of God Hand, such as the dodge system, where you have a series of highs and lows and side steps that you can do. Stuff such as the enemies shit talking you as you go through combat, some of the functions as well of certain abilities you have, like the sweep is kind of similar. You also have the focus system, which is similar to the roulette system, and there's a adaptable difficulty, quote unquote, depending on how well you perform. So a lot of those are really interesting. I just want to get it out of the way. I do think this game is good. I think this is a very good game, but it didn't meet my expectations. I have platinumed this game, or did 100%, whatever you want to say. It took me roughly 20 hours of play according to the Epic Games Store in timer. In game, it says I took 16 hours or so. So, the gameplay you're going to be seeing, though, is a little stuttery because the game is quite intensive on my laptop. And this isn't the cleanest run as well. I do die right before the second skill statue, I believe it's called. I don't know what they're called. But I do think the game is good. I think the story is presented in a very eloquent way. It's told pretty eloquently, and it's nicely done overall. I love the aesthetic. I think the game looks great. The animations are fantastic. I love the color palette. Every location feels very distinct from one another. I love the fact that the enemies all have different looks. Every single one of them, maybe minus a couple of them, but for the most part, every single enemy looks different. And they have all sorts of different voice lines and stuff depending on the context, the situation. I think the music is quite good. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but it definitely fits the mood and overall atmosphere. And it definitely feels like a good old kung fu movie, like cinematically speaking. As far as the gameplay goes, I think it was also quite good. I didn't expect it to be verbatim God Hand, but I do have a couple of issues with the gameplay. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is the lack of enemy variety overall. Even though every character that you fight looks different, there's only technically 5 enemy types in the game. They're the regular gangsters with some slight variations. There's the juggernauts, which are the fat dudes. There's the flash kicks, which are the chicks that mainly use kicks as a primary attack. There's the disciples, which are like, the martial arts like masters, and then there are the bodyguards, which you meet in level 3. And then the game variety just kind of stops there. There are some interesting things, similar to God Hand, where like depending on how the game is feeling, I usually get it whenever you do die, but in this playthrough, I didn't die when you fight the powered up version of one of the enemies. And it's kind of similar to an enemy going demon mode, where you fight one of the demons in God Hand, which I do think is kind of cool. And while the enemies are interesting, there's not enough variety and not enough situations, I think, that really that really make it feel a little more dynamic in a way. This is definitely kind of a quality over quantity thing, but there are games that still have very quality enemies and still has a lot of them. Not Don't Make Cry, really. Well, Don't Make Cry 1, for the most part, has, like, really quality enemies. Probably the best in the series. Bayonetta, Ninja Gaiden, God Hand, of course. There's a lot of different enemy types. Even some of the reskin ones at least get new moves and you have to deal with them in different ways. Here, for the most part, you don't really have to deal with them in significantly different ways when it comes to enemy types. And even though there's like more advanced type stuff, they really don't play out differently. Another issue I have with the game is the overall like progression system. I don't think it's bad, especially for the type of game it is, because of how short it is and how the game really wants you to go through the levels multiple times, especially with how the death system works. I do not like the fact that you have to unlock moves upwards of like 6 times to have them permanently. The overall basic premise of the unlock system is if you have enough XP, you can buy a move. But if you get a game over, you lose those moves unless you permanently buy them. And a move that could cost like 500 XP will technically cost you around like 3000 XP. I don't do it here. And you have to do that for every single move. The caveat to this is that you could just not die, but I still find that very annoying overall because the moves themselves don't they shake up how you play and approach situations, but they're not necessary for how the game is. You could get through the game with the base moveset and do fine. Some stuff may be harder, like Yang, for example, without the triangle pause triangle combo, which is a great punish tool and builds up stature a lot, and makes that fight much more easy, much more bearable. It's not necessary overall. And as you can see right here, I'm just kind of fighting this fat guy. I have another problem. Like, this is probably like a very minor thing, but I hate fighting the Juggernaut enemies, mainly because of their grab. Their grab feels like it's kind of bullshit. I always get hit by their grab, even though I'm sidestepping to the side. I swear they have fucking magnets on their hands, and the hitbox is just ridiculous. The bodyguards also have a grab, but I swear I rarely get hit by them. They also don't do it as often, but I swear I just never get hit by their grab, and I'm doing the exact same thing, just sidestepping to the to like the left or right with the regular dodge function. This is where I start to kind of screw up right here. The gameplay is not very clean, but I just, it was whatever. But yeah, overall the moveset, it's fun, but it's just way too grindy to unlock them. And another thing about, like, when you go to the skill statues, once you restart a level and then go forward, your other skills, like the more passive abilities, like if you do a successful dodge, you get more structure back, or if you do a successful parry, you get more focus, etc. Those do not save overall when you restart, and it kind of sucks because it does help to have those abilities, but it's not completely like game breaking if they did stack as you went through. If they were permanent unlocks, I wouldn't mind that. This is the part where I died. Right here. Very annoying. Maybe like because the game lagged a little bit, I think. Yeah, right there. It's not the footage stuttering because of the recording. That's just how the game was. It's a surprisingly intense game, even though it's only like 20 gigs. And I've had like Tekken 7 be 70 and run a bit more consistently than this. But yeah, another complaint I have with the game, and this will be mitigated as the year goes on, but there's not a lot of the game itself, which I usually don't have a problem with stuff like this. But because of the way the progression system is, it just makes it more of a slog than it has to be. Yeah, here we go. Raining Strikes. This is the really good move against Yang as a punish tool. Which I did forget to mention that another thing that's similar to God Hand is that there is a kind of counter hit and stun system. It works differently compared to God Hand. God Hand, it usually works during the startup of an enemy's move or whenever they're active in an attack. Here, it's just usually as a punish. And once they're stunned, you could like throw them around and do extra hits and the like. So it is quite reminiscent of God Hand in that sort of sense. I forgot to mention that overall. But I do think the game overall is quite fun. I just have some problems with it, especially because the game is lacking content. The game is getting free updates overall. I believe the next update will give us more costumes. It'll give us different modes, like you can't guard, you die in one hit, um, like an advanced score multiplier or something, like where you can play for score, which I think will be pretty fun. I can't wait to see runs like that. Um, but it's not in the base game. You know, it's not something like Devil May Cry where you at least have like Bloody Palace and like a New Game Plus and stuff like that. Ninja Gaiden, with mission mode and like the Test of Valor, like there's really not much to do other than like get the collectibles, which aren't super hard to get, and they don't really do anything other than offer you story, which it does give you some insight on some of the characters, such as Barjar, for example. You get to learn how he has like physical and mental health issues, and I think that's really cool. uh, Kuroki, I believe her name is, the artist. You learn that she has a sister. Something bad might have happened to her, from what the notes have said. So that's probably one of the reasons why she's so obsessed with like herself in portraiture and stuff like that. So there are some interesting things, and the different endings are cool. You could spare the bosses, and if you do that, you get the good ending. If you kill all the bosses, or just kill any of them, really, I believe, you just get the bad ending. You need to spare all the bosses in order to get the good ending, which is nice, and it does add some replay. One problem, I think, that a lot of people don't really seem to talk about as well is the fact that the game does have some scripted events where you just kind of walk slowly and there's not much you can do about it. It happens mostly in the tower, from what I've noticed. um, when you first encounter Jin Fang, and when you get to the mini boss variant of the Flash Kick, that one assassin chick, it happens a couple of times, and I really don't like that. If you compare it to other games of a similar genre, like Samurai Jack, well, this is more of a beat 'em up, but they're still action games overall. 3D, third-person action games. Something like Samurai Jack, there's absolutely no downtime. Absolutely no downtime other than cutscenes, and you can skip them. You are not forced in any sort of walking sections or anything like that, and I just prefer that overall rather than forced walking sections. They're very brief overall in this game, and they're not too intrusive, but I'd rather have none of them than just ones that last like a couple of seconds. It just kind of brings me out of the experience a little bit because it's just forcing me to like intake something for the sake of the story, which is very sparse in this game, but still eloquently told overall. And that's, I believe, it. It just didn't meet my expectations overall. I thought this would be kind of a spiritual successor to God Hand, but it really isn't. God Hand is a lot more bombastic, obviously. It has a juggle system. Of course, the counter hit system is very different, and of course, custom combos, custom movesets, obviously, are a big thing that separated it from other action games. And I knew the game wouldn't have that overall, but I expected the game to have a little bit more meat to the package, in the sense of more content. I expected more than 5 enemy types for sure, and I knew the game would be short, but I didn't think the game would be this short. And I know it sounds like I'm doing a lot of complaining of the game, but these are very minor things, I think, but big to me personally. I am glad that this game is doing well, and I do think this is a good step for the action game genre, especially for a new IP like this. I just wish there was a little bit more to the game. I do think this is a good game overall. I just wish there was more. And it didn't quite wow me in a lot of aspects that I was hoping it would wow me in. compared to other games. I wouldn't say this game is quite a breath of fresh air as something like Samurai Jack was, which is quite unfortunate. And maybe I'm biased because it is by old members of Team Ninja, and I prefer Ninja Gaiden over a lot of action games. But that game had a lot of really good gameplay elements that made it feel still distinct from Ninja Gaiden. And on top of that, it just was not of modern gaming norm. But yeah, basically, I just had high expectations, and the game didn't quite meet them. But I'm not going to say it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. I would say definitely support the developers on this. They're going to give you free updates. There is quite a lot to sink your teeth into. I just don't particularly enjoy the progression system. I don't enjoy how the upgrades are doled out, and I just wish there was more to the game via like enemy types and extra modes and a bit more reward for your exploration overall. And that's about it. All right, you take care now.